Closing the convention this evening and talking to us about the way forward is Stephen Kinnock. He's the MP for Aberavon, and he is head of the new all-party parliamentary group on electoral campaigning and transparency. And he's going to be telling us about some of their recommendations about how we are going to upgrade our political system. And my goodness, do we need it. Please give a very warm welcome to Stephen.
Well, thank you very much, Naomi, for that kind introduction. And I'd also just like to say a word of thanks to Henry for the crucial work that he's doing. In fact, I think Henry and the entire team do deserve a round of applause. If you could just show our... And it really is an honor to follow so many brilliant and esteemed speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, for far too long, we've taken our democracy for granted. We've been complacent, and our complacency has allowed malign forces to subvert our rules and undermine our institutions. It's not just a British phenomenon, of course. Dark money and dirty data is a real and present threat across the West. A recent report by the Atlantic Council, Democracy in the Crosshairs, included 3 case studies: Aaron Banks' funding of the Leave campaigns in the UK, the opaque source of the money behind the rise of the German far-right party Alternative für Deutschland, and the staggering number of donations received by Donald Trump's campaign, which fell below the $200 threshold at which donors must be identified. Now, I know that it can sometimes feel that we're helpless in the face of the tsunami of money and data that is smashing through our flimsy defenses and sweeping all before it. But I'm here to tell you today that we are fighting back. I'm here today to tell you that we will not go gently into that dark night. No, we're going to take a stand. And I'm absolutely convinced that we can and that we will win this battle. Our newly created all-party parliamentary group for electoral campaigning transparency, which I am proud to chair, certainly doesn't have all the answers. But the very fact that we have such a strong and influential group of vice chairs reflects the fact that parliamentarians have woken up and realized that our democracy is under threat and that we must do something about it. Brilliantly supported by the campaign group Fair Vote UK, our APPG includes vice chairs from 5 different political parties, including Ken Clarke, Caroline Lucas, Vera Hobhouse, Owen Smith, and Deirdre Brock. And we are also working closely with the Electoral Commission and the Electoral Reform Society. Our work will focus on 3 specific areas. First, transparency. How we make sure that citizens have access to information, both offline and online, in terms of election and referendum campaigns. Second, deterrence. How we offer the Electoral Commission the tools it needs to deter and, if necessary, penalize adequately. And third, monitoring. How we ensure that there is a process to review where campaigning laws are up to date and can be reformed immediately when needed. We believe that these are the 3 key ingredients to ensuring the public feels confident that the system works. It will be for others to tackle issues such as fake news and setting spending limits. Our core aim will be to guarantee that the rules that exist are enforced and processes are transparent. Parliament has a portcullis as its emblem because it's our job to safeguard the culture, institutions, systems and processes upon which our democratic society is based. I founded this APPG because I'm absolutely convinced that the vast majority of MPs understand that this is our solemn duty, but that we are lacking the tools to carry it out. I must stress that our APPG will look forward, not backwards. We recognize that this issue is bigger than Brexit, and that the focus must now be on laying the groundwork for future elections and referendums, rather than attempt to overturn the result of the 2016 vote. Why? Well, firstly, because any lawyer will tell you that it's almost impossible to make a link between the extra money spent and the extra votes cast in favor of the Leave campaigns. Secondly, because there is no legal basis to rerun the referendum. And thirdly, because we know that we'll get precisely nowhere if we allow our APPG to be sucked into the vortex of the Brexit debate. That said, however, we do need to learn from the past, and the APPG has been founded in large part as a response to the appalling behaviour of the Leave campaigns. My first real understanding of the Leave campaign's unlawful activities date right back to early 2017, when I received a tip-off from a trusted source who told me they'd been informed by someone prominent in the Leave campaign that Vote Leave had been working with Believe in ways which contravened electoral law. Donations between campaign groups are allowed, but not if there is coordination between the two. And it was clear that there had been coordination. I wrote to the Electoral Commission and to the Metropolitan Police to highlight my concerns about the relationship between Vote Leave and Believe. And I also detailed concerns about unreported spending and donations in kind. The Electoral Commission's response was underwhelming, to put it mildly. They seem to be sorely lacking in investigatory capability and legislative bite, essentially a toothless watchdog, unable to adequately investigate activities taking place under their noses. It was only the courage and the tenacity of the whistleblowers and of Carol and of so many people you've heard from tonight that finally blew the lid on the activities of Vote Leave and Believe, ultimately leading to a fine of £61,000 for Vote Leave and £20,000 for Believe. Meanwhile, investigations were also taking place into Cambridge Analytica's harvesting of Facebook data, resulting in a £500,000 fine. And then there was Leave.eu, the unofficial Brexit campaign bankrolled by Aaron Banks, which was found guilty of multiple breaches of electoral law, fined £70,000 and referred to the Metropolitan Police for suspected criminal offences. And having written to the Electoral Commission and the Metropolitan Police about Mr. Banks in April 2017 and again in June 2018, I am pleased that as of November 17, Mr. Banks has been the subject of a National Crime Agency investigation relating to the source of the £8 million that he donated to the Leave campaigns. Now, the exposure of malpractice and the ensuing fines feel like a victory of sorts, but the reality is that they are far from being a deterrent. Indeed, Aaron Banks described these paltry fines as just the cost of doing business. This is because the Electoral Commission was established at a time when political campaigning centred around door-knocking and leafleting. It is an analogue regulator in a digital age. Digital campaigning and online political engagement have revolutionised politics, so it is critical that the Commission is given the tools and the resources it needs to make it fit for purpose in the 21st century. Fair Vote was one of the first organisations to recognise the flaws in the current system, and I worked with them to put forward 4 key recommendations. First, we should look at which powers sit best with the Electoral Commission and which should sit with the police. There should also be unlimited fines for electoral offences, rather than a maximum of £20,000, which is utterly insufficient. Second, all political campaigns should be made to report spending online. Third, financial transfers from designated campaign groups during referendums must be banned. And fourth, we should regulate paid political digital advertising in the election period with a digital Bill of Rights for democracy. Our new APPG will now conduct an inquiry with a view to publishing a green paper that will include recommendations for legislative changes and institutional reform. We will be asking a wide range of organisations to submit evidence, including the Electoral Commission itself, the Information Commissioner, the DCMS Select Committee, the Cabinet Office, the Electoral Reform Society, Full Fact, the Institute for Statecraft, and indeed PayPal. But ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that our APPG will only be tackling the tip of the iceberg. There are profound questions to be answered that go well beyond the scope of our work. In his book, On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, Timothy Snyder writes, "Until recently, we had convinced ourselves that the seemingly distant traumas of fascism, Nazism, and communism were receding into irrelevance. We allowed ourselves to accept the politics of inevitability, the sense that history would move in only one direction, towards liberal democracy. And in doing so, we have lowered our defenses and opened the door to precisely the kinds of regimes we had told ourselves would never return. And Snyder is right. We are engaged in a battle for the very soul of our democracy. Yes, robust competition between opponents is a vital element of a healthy and pluralistic politics. But we now live in a world where the protagonists are playing to win at any cost. A world where campaign finance rules are brazenly flouted. A world where Nigel Farage can describe Parliament Square as enemy territory, and where the Daily Mail can describe our judiciary as the enemies of the people. A world where Kate Hoey can dismiss an electoral commission report on the malpractice of the Vote Leave campaign on the grounds that most of the people on the commission are active Remainers. We cannot go on like this. We must act. In my view, we must urgently build a new political culture on the basis of three cornerstones. First, integrity. We have to build processes, systems, and institutions that inspire trust, hence the launch of our APPG. Second, we must restore faith in the facts. Michael Gove's "we've had enough of experts" comment was typical of our downward spiral from healthy skepticism to Orwellian doublethink. Putin and Trump have constantly muddied the waters between fact and fiction, while social media has become a playground for the conspiracy theorists. The social media platforms are making eye-watering profits. We need them to step up and invest a huge amount more in fact-checking and balance. They should stop behaving like platforms and start behaving like publishers. And the third cornerstone is empathy. We need to stop pitting one group against another. This is happening everywhere we look, whether it's Parliament versus the people, business versus workers, city versus town, young versus old, graduates versus non-graduates, North versus South, or Remain versus Leave. We are dangerously polarized, and we are teetering on the brink of a culture war. We need to rebuild our sense of shared citizenship, reciprocal obligations, common purpose, and empathy. We must learn to see the world through the eyes of others. If we are to reunite our deeply divided country, we need actions, not just words. We need leaders who unite rather than polarize. And we need reform from the bottom up, not just the top down. We need a constitutional convention leading to a written, codified constitution. We need a new electoral system based on proportional representation. Yeah, that's what we need. And we need radical devolution and decentralization of power, particularly across England. Ladies and gentlemen, our democratic system may have looked relatively healthy on the outside, but we have learned that inside it was rotten to the core. We all know that the Leave campaign leaders never expected to win, never had a manifesto or a leader they could unite behind, and none of them ever really wanted the poisoned chalice of leading the country through the ensuing political and constitutional crisis. But never again can we allow there to be such a profound disconnect between expectations, reality, and accountability. Never again can we allow a game-changing democratic event to take place without the slightest thought given to how to deal with the consequences. And never again can we allow our politicians to just make it up as they go along. Politics is not a game. It is a serious business with real-life consequences. The British political class used to be defined by its pragmatism and its agility, but for years now, all we have seen is its shambolic arrogance. Just think of David Davis turning up to meetings with Michel Barnier without a sheet of paper to his name. Or David Cameron whistling a merry tune having just delivered his resignation speech on the steps of Number 10. Or just think of Boris Johnson. Well, just think of Boris Johnson. So, we must now strain every sinew to strengthen our institutions. We must make it our mission to clear away the fake news, dodgy data, and dirty money that is polluting our democracy. And we must make it our defining purpose to save our precious democracy and to safeguard it for future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, our most dangerous enemy is complacency, but I can assure you that we are complacent no longer. Thank you.